Welcome back to We Want Picks. I'm Artem MMA, and I'm going to be breaking down the week number 8 card of the 2024 Contender Series season. Unfortunately, I am coming off the worst result of the year with the week 7 card that was. I thought it was going to be a pretty tough one, but I didn't think it was going to be as rough as it ended up being. So, unfortunately, looking to really bounce back in the last 3 weeks of the season. And I do think that this potentially could be one of those cards, because I think that this is a card which actually has a lot of very hyped up prospects on there. Now, a couple of these matchups are definitely a lot more difficult to predict than others, but of course I will mention that when we get there. I would also say as well, on this card, there are multiple fighters on here that are very highly touted, that are very highly respected, and have been quite hyped up for a very decent amount of time in their career. Another thing as well is that odds haven't been released yet. I'm actually recording this on Sunday. Normally I record these on Friday, but I've just been waiting for odds to drop because I am genuinely curious for this card, and they still haven't come out yet, so I'm genuinely not too sure what we are going to be doing about that. But I am going to predict now that I'm picking 4 favorites and 1 underdog, and I'll let you know when we get there. So aside from that, I do of course have the article out now on the WeWantPicks.com website, and that is of course under the $10 per month premium membership service, where if you do sign up, you can get a 3-day free trial if you use my code ARTEM, and you can cancel during that 3-day trial period as well. And so of course, with all of that being said, I'll see you guys in the predictions. So the first fight of the night is going to be at 170 pounds between Christian Savoie and Jacobe Smith. And just to put it out there now, I do think that this is a pretty good matchup for Jacobe Smith. Jacobe Smith is a very hyped up prospect. I think a lot of people know about him. Even people that don't follow MMA too closely are probably pretty familiar with him for some reason or another. He does have a big time wrestling background. He was an All-American. He trained, of course, and competed in college, where he had over 80 wrestling matches, and I believe he won 68 of them, so that was quite impressive. But of course, yes, he is a big time wrestler, but he has been developing his striking a lot throughout his career so far. In fact, a lot of his wins have come by knockout in the first round, and very recently a lot of these wins have been coming by knockout in the first round on the feet. Against Brian Grinnell and Jared McLaughlin, I thought that he actually showed some very improved striking. Now, I know that these fights didn't last very long, but you can see that his boxing has really come a long way. Prior to those couple of fights, I would say, and even the Austin Jones fight, he didn't have the most technical striking. He kind of did just throw relatively sloppy hooks to close the distance and then get the takedowns. But now it looks like he's very comfortable on the feet. It looks like his boxing has improved drastically. He's throwing a lot of jabs and crosses, a lot of 1-2s very quickly. He's even slipping punches. I know the fight against Jared McLaughlin lasted 18 seconds, but in that one he's showing a lot of head movement and kind of getting out of the way and countering with his 1-2. And he's just getting very quick KOs as of recent. Now, against Brian Grinnell, he showed some scary power, because he, face planted Brian Grinnell up against the cage, and in that fight, it didn't actually look like he landed, a fully wound up punch. He kind of just hit Grinnell in, the perfect spot, I believe, just behind the ear, and Grinnell just folded. It was a very impressive one-shot walk-away KO. And then, of course, in his decision wins, especially the Austin Jones fight, that's where you do see the wrestling base come into play from Jacobe Smith, where he is attempting takedowns against Austin Jones. He is getting those takedowns, and he is finding a lot of success in the control time. Another thing that I want to mention about Jacobe Smith as well is that I think he's actually started to put on a pretty decent amount of size. He actually looked somewhat small in quite a few of these matches at 170 pounds, and even the commentator, I believe against Brian Grinnell, but it could have been the Austin Jones fight, even one of the commentators was mentioning that he thought that he could make 155 pounds. You watch his fight against Jared McLaughlin, and in that, 5-6 month period against Jared McLaughlin, you can tell that Jacobe Smith has been in the gym and he has started to put on a lot more muscle, so I don't think that he is going to be a quote-unquote small welterweight anymore like he may have been in 2023 and earlier. He takes on Christian Savoie, and I do think that Christian Savoie is going to be the bigger fighter in the matchup. This is a guy that has been fighting at middleweight for not the most of his career, but a decent amount of his career, I would say, and he actually has looked like a pretty big guy at 185 pounds. Now, against this guy called Nurgozhay, I thought he looked big. It was a 185 pound matchup. He looked like a big guy. That fight ended up being ruled a draw. You could argue that Takai won it, but it is what it is. You can find it very easily on YouTube. The way that that fight played out was that Christian Savoie, early into the fight, did what he does best, and he got into a brawl against Akai, and Savoie's just a big, powerful striker. He doesn't have the most technique. He's more of a brawler, but he does have pretty heavy leg kicks as well that he can use. And against Akai, he hurts him early, and he looks like he's almost finished him in the first round by knockout. And he doesn't quite get the knockout against Akai, and then Akai towards the end of the first round starts to take him down and control him. You could argue it was a 10-8 round, you could argue it wasn't. And then rounds 2 and 3 happened, and Savoie looked like he had slowed down. Akai is getting takedowns and actually holding him in a position up against the cage, where Akai is on his knee up against the cage, and Akai is just kind of landing that hook ground and pound while kind of just controlling his back, if that kind of makes sense. So that's kind of what happened there. And aside from that, I haven't really been too impressed with what I've seen from Christien Savoie. Like, he is a very powerful guy. He can push a pace if he needs to. He's going to be a big guy, I think, for 170 pounds with the power. But his takedown defense is very suspect. I don't think that his takedown defense is great. It almost looks like he doesn't really have much wrestling to rely on. And the pure grappling doesn't really seem to be like it's going to be a threat to Jacobe Smith. So this kind of just comes down to, how is Jacobe Smith going to fight the fight? Is Jacobe Smith going to rely on his striking, or I guess kind of believe in his striking against a guy that can potentially knock him out? Or is he going to go to his strength in the wrestling and look to wrestle against Savoie? I personally hope he wrestles, because I think if he does wrestle, the takedowns are going to come pretty easily, and he might be able to find a ground and pound finish. But even on the feet, I think that if he does play pretty smart, and he does kind of let Savoie maybe just kind of show his cards a little bit and land some counter punches that we have seen from Smith, maybe he can get it done on the feet as well. But I'm going to pick Jacobe Smith to win this fight by ground and pound in the first round. I think he is going to get the takedowns. I think the takedowns would be able to come pretty easily against Savoie, because he hasn't shown the best takedown defense against worse wrestlers. So I think that Smith goes out there. I think he gets the finish in the first round. I think he gets it done by ground and pound TKO in the first round. And now Abdellah Er-Ramy fights against Torrez Finney, and this is actually a somewhat similar matchup, I would say, to the fight that I just broke down before, but I would say that Torrez has a little bit less of the striking threat, even though he is a pretty powerful guy. Torrez Finney, of course, a lot of people know he was on the Contender Series earlier this year, and he was actually on the Contender Series last year, and in my opinion, against Yuri Panfarov, had a much more impressive performance. And in hindsight, I mean, he really could have been signed from that performance against Panfarov, because against another wrestler, another grappler, he does out-wrestle Panfarov, and he does find the submission in that fight. He does only fight once, gets in a brutal KO that went pretty viral, was a massive overhand left, and then he fought, of course, against Cam Ralston, who is a city kickboxing guy, I believe a 6'3" middleweight, pretty long, rangy guy. In hindsight, a nightmare matchup, but at the time I actually thought it would be a good matchup for him, because I had seen Ralston kind of struggle against shorter wrestlers like Isi Fikatefu, was able to knock him out and take him down. Torrez Finney wasn't really able to do that. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen that fight against Ralston, and the way that he kind of does end up winning that fight is by getting the takedowns and the control, but he didn't really manage to get that much ground and pound off against Ralston, and every time that the fight was on the feet, Ralston was piecing him apart. So in that matchup, I kind of thought, oh man, like Torrez Finney, he looks like a pretty small middleweight, even though he is an absolute monster. He's listed at 5'8". He might be a little bit shorter than 5'8", I'll be honest with you guys, and he actually does look like a pretty small middleweight, even though he's like just a mountain of a man, except not really in the height. He takes on Abdellah Er-Ramy, and Abdellah Er-Ramy's kind of an interesting guy for me. I wasn't able to find the most tape on Abdellah Er-Ramy, and the reason why was because the promotion that he's fought for the most, this AFL promotion, I couldn't access their website for some reason. I don't know if they've closed the website or something, or maybe I've been geo-blocked because I'm in New Zealand. I couldn't see all that much, but what I could see was a bunch of highlights on YouTube. I even watched one of the fights on Facebook. I think it was like one of the earlier ones here against Jonathan Casarregio. But what Abdellah Er-Ramy is going to bring to the table, I think, is a somewhat similar skill set to what we did see in the Cam Ralston fight against Torrez Finney, where he is a striker as well. You can find his fight in PFL Europe very easily. It's at light heavyweight. And in that matchup, he looks like he's got a little bit of a belly on him. He kind of had a little bit more weight than just kind of pure muscle. He wasn't built like Torrez Finney, I'll kind of put it like that. and he gets hurt early, and then just kind of gets a big comeback with a big comeback KO. It was pretty fun to watch, but it wasn't really the best kind of matchup to see what he's all about. And then I was able to watch one of his more recent fights at middleweight at 185 pounds, and he was in great shape, like really, really good shape. So I wonder if he's going to kind of come in with that physique instead of the light heavyweight physique. Abdellah Er-Ramy seems to be a striker as well. I think that he's going to be easier to take down for Torrez Finney because he isn't a guy that fights from range. From what I've seen, he mostly likes to fight with the hooks, and he even has attempted a few takedowns as well. He was actually wrestling, I believe, this guy, one of these opponents that I was able to find the fight on Facebook. I do apologize. I wasn't 100% sure which one it was, but it was on Facebook. Abdellah Er-Ramy can wrestle. It looks like he's offensively wrestled quite a bit in his game as well. But for the most part, on the feet, he is kind of just like a brawler. He kind of looks like he could be a guy that Torrez Finney could catch on the feet. But we did learn that Finney doesn't really have that much striking, unfortunately. I am going to go with Torrez Finney. I do think that the takedowns are going to be able to come a little bit easier against a shorter opponent and against an opponent that's not as tall or as long as Cam Ralston. And Cam Ralston was using a very good job of keeping Finney at bay with those push kicks, with those teeps, and with those long straight punches that he was throwing. Abdellah Er-Ramy is kind of a guy that's probably going to close the distance, and I think that Torrez Finney's going to be able to duck under and get those power takedowns like he was able to do. The question is, can Torrez Finney get a finish? If Torrez Finney doesn't finish this fight, he has accepted it on short notice. Maybe Dana White would say, you've gone 3-0 in the Contender Series. How many more contenders do you need to beat? It's a tough one. I am actually picking Torrez Finney to win by ground and pound KO, but I'm not like super sold that he's going to be able to get it because he didn't look that great in top control against Cam Ralston, I will be honest. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes, but I do think that the takedowns for Finney will come easier than they did against Cam Ralston that first time around earlier this year. Now David Martinez fights against Xavier Franklin. David Martinez is a very hyped up prospect, and I do find it somewhat interesting in this fight that he is listed as the shorter guy because Xavier Franklin looked pretty short, and David Martinez didn't look that short at bantamweight, I thought. Now, David Martinez did look like a small bantamweight compared to a couple of his opponents, but he didn't really look like a short 5'5" guy, and I do hope that he's actually a little bit taller than that because of the way that he fights. David Martinez fights from range. He has very slick kickboxing, very nice boxing as well, and just kind of is overall a very talented technical striker, I would say. He does have offensive wrestling as well, and he actually utilized a lot of offensive wrestling, I believe, in this matchup here against Axel Asuna, because that's actually how we ended up getting the finish. Axel Asuna was standing up, and David Martinez was just absolutely pommeling him with hooks as he was standing up in the clinch, and ended up getting the TKO in that way there. And then against Jose Zariush, that fight really did primarily take place on the feet, and David Martinez actually landed a spinning wheel kick KO that was very, very impressive, and you can find it pretty easily on YouTube, so I do recommend watching that one because it is a great KO to watch. But that's how David Martinez fights. He has very good footwork, very good movement, and I know that bantamweight is one of those divisions where you do have to be technical. He is a very technical striker. I think he's a pretty fast striker as well. He does have a lot of like an array of techniques because he doesn't just kind of rely on a 1-2. He doesn't just rely on his hooks and a leg kick. He can kick to the head, he can kick to the body and to the legs as well. And he does also have just good boxing fundamentals. When he does get into the inside, he can be in the pocket and not be getting hit in the pocket. So I think that he's just a very good technical striker, and he kind of is taking on the opposite to him in Xavier Franklin, who is a guy who, I guess it might have just been because of the size of the opponents that he had been fighting, looks to be a pretty short bantamweight with a lot of power and a lot more of a brawler with less technique. Now, to be fair to Xavier Franklin, although he did look like a pretty small guy in there, a lot of his recent fights have been against tall guys. Isaiah Gutierrez is 5'8", Mateo Gonzalez is 5'11", and I believe Corey Suncliffe was 6 foot, 5'10". So he looked like a small guy in there against these opponents that I was able to see him fight against. And the way that you see these fights is for Peak Fighting. There is a free video of his fight on Peak Fighting, but you have to pay for his most recent one against Gutierrez. But in the other ones on YouTube against Corey Sutcliffe. But the way that he does fight is that he looks to be a pretty short guy for bantamweight. I would say he might be a little bit shorter than Martinez, but we're about to find out. and he closes the distance with a lot of power. He's a brawler, he does rely a lot on his hooks, but he also looks to be kind of technical as well, which is quite interesting. He's very much a pressure forward fighter. He's definitely going to be having David Martinez walking on the back foot, and he does have some wrestling as well. He was attempting takedowns in quite a few of his matchups. Of course, he did use a takedown to get Corey Sutcliffe down to the ground, but I think the choke actually come from a knockdown and Sutcliffe gave up his back quickly. But against Mateo Gonzalez, he was initiating some takedown attempts in there as well. So I do know that if he wants to, he could go out there and take down David Martinez, which probably would be the path of least resistance, because I do think this is a good matchup for Martinez on the feet. I think that Martinez's footwork is going to be a little bit too good. I think he's very good at fighting from the back foot. In fact, that is how he fights most of his fights. I'm pretty confident Xavier Franklin is going to be the guy moving forward, but we have seen that if a guy has very good movement, moving side to side, it's not that easy to chase. Like, I know that this is probably a bit of a harsh example because of how recent it was, but Joanderson Brito versus William Gomis, especially in that third round where Brito's just trying to chase him down and Gomis is just like kind of running away and sidestepping and using his movement like that, and Brito just couldn't land anything on him because he's moving so much. I think that's what this fight could honestly look like, but I do think that David Martinez will eventually land something that will finish the fight, but I don't think it's going to happen in the first round. It doesn't look like David Martinez really does just have like natural one punch, like knock you out power. I know he does have that one punch wheel kick KO against Zarus. That fight against Axel Asuna was really an accumulation of damage. I think that in this matchup against Xavier Franklin, he's going to make Xavier Franklin swing and miss. He's going to land the counters, and I think eventually it's all going to add up, and I think he's going to be able to find a late finish in the third round. So I'm going to pick Martinez to win by KO in the third round after slowing down Xavier Franklin, making him run around and, well, working the body and tiring him out. That's how that one goes. Now we move up to Alberto Montes versus Carlos Calderon. Very difficult fight to predict. I know if you just look at Tapology, 96% of people are picking Montes. I don't share the same confidence at all, and I'm very interested to know what the odds are going to be, because I thought that the odds were going to drop for this fight, and they haven't yet, unfortunately. This is a short notice one though. Carlos Calderon, to my knowledge, has accepted this fight on pretty short notice. The original matchup was Alberto Montes versus Robbie Ring, but to my understanding, I don't think Robbie Ring actually ever accepted the fight because Robbie Ring was promoting a different fight on his Instagram in November. So Carlos Calderon, to my knowledge anyway, has accepted this fight on short notice, and he might have only actually accepted this fight about a week and a half before the fight does take place, if the time that it got added to Tapology is accurate to the time that it was signed. Nonetheless, Calderon does not have a full camp, and I know that Alberto Montes does. Carlos Calderon is a massive guy for the weight class. He is listed at 5'10", but if you watch him, man, he's got a big size advantage in most of these fights. He's really, really big, but what he does not do too great is striking. And the way that he strikes is he kind of just rushes forward, just throwing. Like, he doesn't really throw like with anything. He's just throwing his hands around there with his chin up in the air, and he can get caught pretty easily. Now, he has actually been knocked down a few times in his career so far, but he still hasn't been knocked out, which is quite amazing, really. This opponent here, Alejandro Gaviria... Sorry, it was Curtis Ellis knocked him down like 30 seconds into the fight, and then they went to war, and he ended up getting the submission. But against Alejandro Gaviria, he was able to use the grappling. He has been knocked down multiple times in his career so far, just because he does run forward with his chin up in the air, and his striking technique's not that great. He does attempt takedowns though, which is something that Alberto Montes doesn't really do, and that's where he wants to have the fight, is on the ground. Now, Carlos Calderon will very happily have the fight on the ground. I've seen him pull guard before. I believe in his matchup against Alejandro Gaviria, he actually threw a kick, slipped over, and then turned that slip into an armbar attempt, which was somewhat impressive, even though he did just kick himself off balance, so it didn't look that great. But he's a very good grappler. He's definitely like a submission kind of guy, and I think that it actually could work against an opponent like Alberto Montes, especially if they do make him a very big underdog. Alberto Montes, I would say, is a lot more comfortable on the feet, but I don't think that he's a great striker either. It doesn't really look like he has much boxing. He mostly throws kicks, and he throws a lot of them, and a lot of those kicks are high kicks. He does have pretty dangerous leg kicks though, which kind of could be money against a guy with long legs in Carlos Calderon. He's a grappler as well, except he doesn't really attempt that many takedowns himself. He kind of just waits for his opponents to attempt takedowns on him, and then he goes out there and uses his grappling as well. So both of these guys are willing to be on their back, but I would say out of the two, Carlos Calderon is the grappler that's more willing to be on his back. So I'm going to go with Alberto Montes here, because I do think that if anyone's going to be more comfortable on the feet, it's going to be him. I think if anyone's going to be better on the feet, I think it's going to be him. And I think that there is a genuine chance that he could hurt Carlos Calderon on the feet, just because Calderon is very hittable and Montes could land. Like, he could genuinely land one of those high kicks I was talking about, but I think that the body kicks and the leg kicks will eventually mount up, taking on a massive guy that's going to have to cut a lot of weight on short notice. I'm going to go with Montes. I think he might find a finish later on into the fight, but this is just don't bet on this fight is kind of my advice. I think there's a genuine chance that Montes could just open up as a massive favorite, and I don't agree with it at all. I don't feel good about this one. It's grappler versus grappler. Neither guy really has wrestling necessarily. Montes doesn't really shoot for takedowns. Calderon does, so maybe you would like that in a like a control sort of decision situation, but I'm going to pick Montes. I'm going to pick Montes to win by submission, but I just don't feel very good about this one. Then we can move up to the final fight, and what I think will probably be my underdog pick. I would be very surprised if they have Nurgozhay as the underdog, but I think that the odds are probably going to be a lot closer than the Tapology votes do suggest. Now, Nurgozhay and Bartosz Szewczyk, I believe the UFC have been very keen on signing both of these guys for a while, and in fact, I thought that when Nurgozhay beat Emiliano Sordi, they weren't going to bother with the Contender Series. I thought that they were just going to sign him straight up into the promotion, but it turns out they want to put him onto the UFC. Bartosz Szewczyk is also in a similar situation, where I believe that Bartosz was actually in the conversation to be accepting a short notice replacement option into the UFC, and I don't think, maybe visa issues got in the way or something like that, but I know that the UFC have been having their eye on him for a while as well. Bartosz Szewczyk is the champion over at FEN, which is the Polish promotion which Mateusz Rebecki found a lot of success in, and he is a striker. Now, he's a pretty big guy for the weight class. He does stand at 6'4", but he's not a thin 6'4". He seems to be a pretty well-built guy, and he does use that size pretty well. He does fight from range quite well, but I would say the best asset that he does have in his striking is his kicks, and especially those body kicks. Now, against the opponent in a rematch against Marcin Lesage, he landed the body kick early into the first round, and Lesage just started to slow down kind of instantly, honestly, and he just kept landing that body kick over and over and over again, and then eventually, very late into the third round, the perfect shot landed on the liver and folded Lesage just moments before the bell rang for the end of the third round there. Prior to that, though, of course, you can watch his fight on UAE Warriors. I left a pretty funny comment on the YouTube channel that posted a re-upload of the fight saying, "This is AI. There's no way I lost this fight," because his name was Artem. Yeah, probably not that funny, but that's how Bartosz Szewczyk does fight. He does fight from range, mostly throwing with jabs. He throws a lot of jabs, and he can double up the jab pretty regularly. Even in his rematch against Lesage, I think he threw like 4 jabs at once, and the first one is moving forwards. His takedown defense is questionable, and to be fully honest with you guys, I don't actually know how good it is overall. I have seen him defend initial takedown attempts, but I've never really seen an opponent really fully lock into an attempt, have him up against the cage, and then he has to work out of that, and I haven't really seen him get taken down and then have to work his way up to his feet, so it's kind of hard to tell how good he's going to be because he's taking on a wrestler now in Nurgozhay. But the thing about Nurgozhay is he's listed at 6'2". I don't think he's 6'2". I think he's small for 205 pounds. You watch this guy fight, I would almost say he's like 2 inches shorter than that. I think he might be 6 foot tall. And you look at him, I don't think he's a light heavyweight. I think this guy's a middleweight, honestly, because it looks like he's got a little bit more size in him. He looks like in a lot better shape in this photo than what he did against Emiliano Sordi, I'll tell you that much. He goes out there, and he is a wrestler for the most part, but against Emiliano Sordi, although he attempted a couple of takedowns, he looked like he mostly had the intention of striking with Sordi, which is kind of sad just to kind of see the point of where Sordi's career is now after he won the 2019 PFL Championships. But against Emiliano Sordi, Sordi just kind of covered up, man. Like, every time Nurgozhay landed something, Sordi was just covering up and letting him land. It was An odd fight to watch. They were getting in the clinch a lot. He was attempting takedowns that Sordi was defending. And he ends up finishing Emiliano Sordi with like a flurry of punches in the clinch, which was just a sad watch because I actually have been a fan of Emiliano Sordi for a while, and just kind of seeing him go on this run is it's a bit sad. It just is, really. But aside from that, the way that he fights is wrestling. He goes out there against this guy called Magomed Magomedov, and if you guys are unfamiliar with him, Magomed Magomedov accepted this fight on short notice, and prior to this fight, was fighting at lightweight. He fought against Mateusz Rebecki at 155 pounds about a year and a bit before he fought Nurgozhay, and if you watch the fight, it looked like Magomed Magomedov had just really started to enjoy pizza because he was a big boy in there. He didn't look like the 155-pound South that fought Rebecki, I'll tell you that much. And in that fight, he does get the wrestling going, he does get the takedowns, looks very good in top control. Against Andrzev, kind of the same situation as well. He does take on Andrzev and he gets the takedowns, gets the control, and wins using his control. Both of these fights are on YouTube. Even the UAE Warriors fight, you want to watch it on Fight Pass for the better coverage, but you can, I believe someone's re-uploaded that on YouTube as well. But Diyar Nurgozhay, he is a wrestler. I don't like his striking that much. I have actually been talking about this fight with 138 MMA. And 138 MMA likes the striking. He likes the fact that he is very accurate with his punches. And when he does land, he lands with power. Which is kind of the opposite to Bartosz, because Bartosz doesn't have that many knockouts in his career. I know he's got a couple, but the way that Bartosz does fight is it doesn't look like he's like throwing like to really knock you out. He's just throwing to get volume out there. He's just a very high volume guy, and he's not really throwing to just land and get the one punch KO power. Whereas Diyar Nurgozhay probably is the more powerful matchup striker in the matchup. But I'm gonna pick Bartosz, which from what I've seen, I think that he is going to have the takedown defense to keep the fight on the feet. And I think as long as the fight is on the feet, he's going to be the much more comfortable striker. And I think that he is going to be able to go out there and just land more volume. And I think that he is going to be able to win a decision in this matchup. The thing is, though, of course, with Szewczyk, he throws a lot of kicks. A wrestler can catch kicks. So maybe Diyar Nurgozhay can get the fight down to the ground by catching the kicks. And another one as well is that Nurgozhay has shown the ability to finish the fights with submission, with grappling. Szewczyk pure grappling, I don't really know how good his BJJ is, so I guess it is just a little bit of an unknown. But I am going to pick Bartosz to have the better movement, to move around, and I think he can land from range. I think he can land that body kick, and I think that body kick's going to be money, because Diyar Nurgozhay, he's got a little bit of a belly on him, and I think that Szewczyk is going to be able to connect quite a few times on that belly with his body kick. So those are my predictions for this week. Hopefully I can bounce back from last week's predictions, which did not end up being all that great. But I do think that this is a bit of a better card for making predictions. So let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.